All right, so welcome to the Honey and Coffee podcast today. My name is Kasey, once again, one of your co-hosts, and I have here Bubbles as one of your other co-hosts / guests, and we are going to go over the 2023 MyAnimeList Writing Contest winners together with Honeyfeed. And we're going to be going over all the winners as well as the finalists. We're going to be talking about, all the 3 winners today, what we liked about their stories, how we think they won, what criteria they really matched to make sure that they won. And really, honestly, just to mention, we talked about writing inclusivity in the writing space. So if you're curious about, other episodes we've released as part of Honey and Coffee podcast, please go and check it out on YouTube. With that being said, I'm going to go let Bubbles take over our finalists and what the criteria really was to win.
Thank you, Kasey. So, to give a bit of context, what we've done differently this year is that all the novels had the same prompt to follow. It was wholesome romance from the male perspective. And in this prompt, we offered our writers 2 genres, isekai and present day or contemporary, and then we let them run free. Now, our judging process has changed year by year. We've had 2 finals, 1 for each prompt, and of those we have taken 3 winners, 1 from each prompt, and then the best runner-up. And the way we did that was, as always, we've had a jury go over each finalist, give their opinions, and their opinions have been collated with the public voting results, which left us with 2 winners of each prompt, and then a runner-up, the best of the rest. And with that preamble out of the way, I think, Kasey, should we start with Visual Shock, and you can tell us what you liked about it.
So yeah, let's start with Visual Shock by Just Another Adult. This was a very interesting story. I felt like there were a lot of chapters, but every chapter felt like it had a kind of like a main mini story or setting to really tell and flesh out as part of the whole main story. So there was about, I believe, like 40 chapters in this entire novel end to end. First of all, I felt like none of the chapters were boring. I felt like every chapter had like kind of its own mini setting to tell. I really liked the story first and foremost. I wanted to go over a little bit of the key details. I really liked, first of all, the character development. I typically, when I read a lot of these types of stories, the character development is a little bit subpar to my liking. Typically, I don't really like if a story, if I dislike the character, or at least the main characters, and I want to make sure that the character development really does play an instrumental role within the narrative. So first of all, I think the female main character, Kylie, she expressed herself in a really great way that developed herself as a character. She was rather cold near the beginning to her main MC, I would say, near the beginning of the story, but then as time passed on and with various different conflicts and drama kind of pushing both our main characters through a lot of different challenges, we saw that alongside the narrative, she became much more gradually open, expressive, happier, and even more so just friendlier in general, much more, almost like she got along in a very interesting dynamic with the main character. She warmed up to our other main characters, and I really feel like following her story path, it allowed me to enjoy the story really well. And, she warmed up our readers. She expressed herself much more freely. Another thing I obviously kind of noticed was the great structure of the chapters. Again, just kind of going back to the 40 chapters. With just the simplicity of the way that the chapters were named, I understood that at least I could easily tie what the chapter was about. There was a big event once again, and every chapter almost felt like there was some sort of hook that wanted me to just keep reading, which was really great. I really liked the way that they kind of got fleshed in there. One example, for example, chapter 33, near the final end, for spoiler, Kylie's sister, she just says very plainly, my sister is dead while in the middle of a concert. Like, this type of stuff, when you read to the end and you witness these types of events, is what really gets the storytelling going, really what's pushing the reader to want to read the next chapter. So I thought that was great. It was losing me a tiny bit next chapter, and it got me right back into it, for example. So that's one really great example I wanted to provide there. So, Bubbles, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I think the standout for me was how the core thing was the quirk, was the overall visual key as the element that brought the protagonists together. I thought that choice was very apt. I think, first of all, it was, as I said, stand out. It was unique. I think not many rom-coms or just stories in general have explored this sort of area. Alternative clothing not probably being a big thing in Japan, and I liked how the author was enterprising and endeavored to reach this sort of niche, and it reminded me a lot of Bistol, which was very successful when it came out, because Bistol also uses the subject of Hinna dolls to sort of describe the character, and whilst it continues using cosplay as the binding element, in our case Just Another Adult uses visual kei as the continuous binding force. It's the start, the middle, and the end. Everything revolves around it. And to add on that point, I think the message that the visual kei aesthetic sends, or like Just Another Adult sends with it, is very, very clever. It's very thoughtful and very beautiful and personal. It tells that the expression of one's personality can and should be encouraged to happen outside of the social norms, be them about, gender, how a university student is expected to behave, or how, any human is expected to behave. It kind of takes the you out of the society it lives in. And I feel that is an incredible choice when you think about the setting of it. It's about a boy who has gone abroad to study in Tokyo, and seeing this kind of thing where the freedom of expression is put at the forefront against the backdrop of a socially conservative Japan who is slowly thawing out, I thought that was very good, and I would like to see more stuff like that, be it in the future of our contest or just in the future in general. Now, that being said, I think the next one should be Songstress of Avalon. So, Kasey?
So the next story is the Songstress of Avalon, and I am a fan of the isekai genre as well, as long as it's executed well. I thought that the premise of what the hero and the party they're already within that fantasy world, and our main character just decided to live within that fantasy world. So first of all, I also want to mention the epilogue and the prologue were, in my opinion, executed well. The epilogue and the prologue, especially the prologue, really, it has to set the premise in a way that it has to feature at least one of the main characters. It has to show some sort of, what you call foreshadowing within storytelling. And it's one of the only things that really featured an epilogue and a prologue out of our winners. Now, I thought the way that the prologue was featuring our main female character, Arisa, getting isekai'd, and then our main male character, Ayato, kind of just waiting there, it showed, at least in this circumstance, everything kind of already exists, and it's up to the woman now to really kind of play a little bit of catch-up, so to speak. So, not much to the point where the readers feel like they're also playing catch-up when they're reading it. I think that also, for example, there's a lot of great hooks, just like the previous winner, and, especially with the prologue, allow me to not, it keeps... Especially with the prologue, it helped me, keep an element of mystery when I'm reading. There's a lot of characters, but to the point where following only one or two characters' point of views allows me to understand that there isn't too much to miss out on, so to speak. I also thought that Ari, has a great development despite being isekai'd. I think that she still gets to shine despite the male point of view that's really going on, and there's a lot of enthusiasm that's really attached, so I think it's very paramount.
Right, what I liked about Songstress of Avalon, I think, was the good writing style. I think it's a very good example of what it means to have a light novel style, insofar as it wasn't very elaborate, but it wasn't simple or basic either. It had just the right balance of descriptions and dialogue and narration, all those three things combined to make it a very digestible read that gave a very brisk pace to the plot so that it didn't dawdle, because light novels should try to be as alert as they can, and dawdling is exactly the opposite of that. So to summarize, the good writing style was a standout for Songstress of Avalon. Another thing that might be a bit controversial to say is that there was a good variety in the gallery of characters. It reminded me in a way of Howl's Moving Castle, and I will take that point further right away, in the sense that it created a good variety of potential. Howl's Moving Castle, although not many people might know, is a book series first of all, and they continue with 2 more stories set in the same universe. As with that series, what Songstress of Avalon could be doing very easily is create a lot of spin-offs and continuations of those characters that I mentioned, so that if we would want to continue in spite of its closed ending, we could still cherry pick any sort of plot within the world and create our own sort of Mega Man spin-off, like we saw 2 seasons ago in the anime world. And yeah, I think this is pretty much what I think about Songstress of Avalon. Now, Kasey is going to take us to the final novel, Telling the Bees.
So, alright, the last one, Telling the Bees by Ammonia. Now, first of all, this one really struck to me based on its premise, and I'm sure, Bubbles, you can probably expand on this because it was one of your favorite stories too. The premise of featuring a widowed main character, then getting isekai, and then having to go through the notions of both internal and external conflict and self-rediscovery and development, that really hit me, struck me hard, mostly because obviously it's a unique premise for an isekai, right? I thought the writing style had a lot of depth to it. I didn't really necessarily feel like it was a very fast-paced story. But at the same time, I think there was a crazy height to the story. There was obviously drama in a way that's not necessarily melodramatic, but more so, just character development focused on our main character. And I also thought that Mitsu, the narrator really shined a different light on Mitsu as a widower. And featuring Amber, the female MC, really kind of going through those motions of supporting Mitsu and getting him back on his feet. It's just a touching romantic story that it felt like, for me, the story almost wrote itself because of that premise and the way that it was story told. And Bubbles, I know you want to probably expand on this further. I know you're itching to try to talk more about it, so go ahead.
So, as Kasey mentioned, I thought the premise was very unique. I don't think we have a lot of stories which feature a widower, and especially when that widower is trying to also find his footing inside an isekai world. What happens is Mitsu has lost his wife, and he has spent a lot of time and money trying to scour Japan for the medium who would be able to get him back in touch with her. Obviously, it's a hapless endeavor. So, after another failure in his journey, he goes to the racetrack, and meeting up with an old buddy of his, they just kind of go around the circuit one last time, so to speak. During that circuit run, both Mitsu and his friend die, and they wake up in the isekai world. And I think, genuinely, from this premise alone, you can already foretell what the plot is going to be. It almost writes itself in a way, and that is very important because even if it's predictable, this level of predictability creates an attachment to the reader. We are already aware on some subconscious level that the story will follow Mitsu managing to get over the loss of his wife. But the thing is, we don't know how that will happen or the obstacles to that. And this is where Amber comes in. Amber is the woman who sees Mitsu first when he wakes up. She helps her out. She helps him out, my bad. And we think there's going to be smooth sailing until we find out that Amber is secretly running away from her duties as the next royal beekeeper in line, a profession that might not sound very big to us, but in a kingdom where the bees are almost a mythical force is extremely resonant. And so, with that in mind, we have the combination of a predictable plot to some extent and an unpredictable spin to it, when these two combined come together to make a very good plot. Now, as for another thing I enjoyed is that once again we have a good potential to continue the story. In this case, as opposed to Songstress of Avalon, we can continue the story directly. The ending was open. It ended on Mitsu finally being able to tell the bees to speak to them and have them speak back about what he should do with regards to his wife. He basically just had a small confession with the bees, told them about his struggles, and the bees understood and told him back. And we don't feel like this is actually a finalized plot, but we can 100% keep at it. It feels in a way as if Mitsu's arc has ended, and that gives us a satisfying conclusion. However, Amber's arc with becoming the royal beekeeper is yet to start, and we can definitely in a future volume continue on that note. Not only that, but the fact that there are wasps in this world of bees, which are definitely viewed as enemy forces. And there's also the bears, who, as we all know, love to stuff their muzzles with some honeycombs. We can also focus on these two aspects to just create more and more conflict. And the fact that we had the seeds of this conflict sprinkled in the first installment is a good ground for any potential continuation. And so, in this regard, I think Harmonia's Tame the Bees is very apt, is very good, and this is why it won the runner-up spot. And I think that's all I can say about Telling the Bees.
All right, so thank you again for listening to today's episode. We covered Visual Shock by Just Another Adult, The Songstress of Avalon by Yammu, and Telling the Bees by Ammonia again. These three novels all have their unique quirks and traits that allow them to really stand out above the rest and meet all the criteria we were looking for. So I hope we appreciate everyone who really contributed to this writing contest, and I hope that we do see more and more submissions and future writing contests in the future. And again, thank you again for listening. And Bubbles, I know you wanted to mention some stuff about Hivemind, correct?
Yes, it's important to know that just by participating in the contest, you do have a chance to get scouted, obviously more so if you reach the finals. And so, obviously, Hivemind is our literary agency. Its goal is to put the authors from the West in contact with the Japanese companies, whether they be just like anime companies or manga companies or light novel companies. It's basically a way to pitch your light novel ideas without any of the hassle of having to translate them or so on. We will take care of it so long as you earn a contract. And the way you can earn this contract is quite simple. You should very simply keep on writing on Honeyfeed, because you never know where an opportunity might arise, and maybe your story is precisely what we're looking for. So do keep writing and do keep posting, and we will see you on Honeyfeed, and Kasey and I will see you in our next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.